Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics: Y&R, spoilers, Tuesday, September 30th, revealed that at Jabba, a video call between Jack Abbott and Jill opens a new layer of undercurrents in Genoa City's business war. Jill, as usual, gets straight to the point. Who's in trouble and how bad it is? The question cuts to the heart of Jack's concern. Billy Jill's voice is a mix of weariness and exhaustion, because every time Billy's name comes up, it means old Abbott family wounds are reopened. Jack responds with a calm tone. Through countless crises, she hurt Billy badly. Billy believes Jill has forgiven Kane while punishing him for everything. Kane's name once again becomes the focus of the conflict. Jack doesn't beat around the bush. The stakes are higher than you imagine, and Kane is behind all of this. For Jill, Kane was often a colorful variable, sometimes a spoiler, sometimes an opportunist. But Jack saw a systematic chain of actions, manipulating expectations, using rumors as leverage, creating fake crises, and then taking real profits. When Jill argued that she didn't understand why people always saw Kane as a threat, Jack ended with the most straightforward invitation: get on a plane and see for yourself. In Jack's logic, if Jill still considered Kane controllable, only getting on the ground, seeing the contracts, emails, decision timelines, and financial traces with her own eyes would change her mind. The truth, in Jack's eyes, lay just beneath the glossy veneer of the deals Kane was involved in. The call hadn't even cooled when Billy appeared at the door. "Do you have time for a family talk? I really need one right now." The moment seemed simple, but was filled with contradictions. It was a cry for help after months of uncertainty and a test of Jack's patience. The older brother who had repeatedly reached out to pull Billy back from the edge, only to see him plunge back down the other way. Jack hung up the phone with Jill, looked straight at Billy, ready to hear what he knew. Billy and Sally had made up, and Billy wanted Jack to once again be the sole investor in Abbott Communications. 5 months ago, Jack might have relented out of family affection, out of a desire to see Billy stand on his own 2 feet. But now, Jack's demeanor had changed. "You pushed me too far, Billy. I had no choice." The cold words weren't meant to be punishment, but rather a last-ditch effort to put discipline before emotion, because if he continued to rescue this time, it would be no different from legitimizing an operating model where personal will could override financial discipline, pushing everything into the old cycle of debt, conflicts, and strategy presentations only to evaporate like foam before an unexpected text or call. Billy did not give up. He affirmed that he had broken away from Kane and the blind pursuits related to Chancellor, things that always turned his project into a proxy battleground for petty feuds. But for Jack, words were no longer valuable currency. He needed tangible guarantees, a clear governance charter, a capital structure that did not depend on family wind. KP is tied to disbursement, progress, and a verifiable communication product revenue roadmap. "I could not continue to play back and forth." Jack said this not to slam the door, but to set a minimum condition. If Abbott Communications was to survive, it had to live by a set of rules that could not be broken on a whim. In Jack's eyes, this no was Billy's chance to say yes to discipline. On the other side of the game, Victor Newman was doing what he did best: rallying his family, reshaping the team, setting strategic priorities. The discussion about Kane with Victoria, Nick, and Nikki was not just about an individual. It was a lesson in risk management. How could someone like Kane, without necessarily having a financial empire, still be a threat? For Victor, the answer lay in his ability to read the cracks and find the weak spots in the system. Where there was family conflict, Kane would sow doubt. Where there was a project that needed funding, Kane would slip through opaque agreements. Where there was a media waiting for a scoop, Kane would drop a story that was half-truthful enough to create pressure. Victor raised the issue of a proposed partnership from Jack and Nikki, always reserved when it came to power, confirmed that Victor was seriously considering it. It wasn't that Victor lacked confidence, but that he saw a practical benefit with figures like Kane stirring up trouble. A temporary new Monabo alliance could create a firewall thick enough to neutralize guerrilla plans. Nikki's admission was like a stamp of approval. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. This wasn't a rumor. This was a possibility on the table. Victor makes a subtle move. He tests his children's reactions to the possibility of a partnership with Jack. Victoria, pragmatic and always protective of Newman's intellectual property, will question the boundaries: how far to go, what data to share. Are the anti-conflict clauses strong enough? Nick, more cautious after stormy seasons, may see another benefit. The partnership helps isolate quasi-chaos actors like Kane while also providing an ethical framework for the market to know that, Newman and Abbott can put discipline above historical animosity. Nikki, with the sensitivity of one who has been through enough wars, sees a soft message. A public or covert handshake is also a reassurance to shareholders, partners, and employees that they are rowing the same boat toward calm waters. At this point, Billy's problem becomes clearer than ever. If he really wanted Jack back as sole investor, he would have to present a package Jack couldn't deny. A viable revenue model, a launch roadmap that didn't rely on family halo, a list of vetted suppliers and partners, and an independent enough advisory board to stop him whenever he started to drift off track. More importantly, he would have to prove that cutting off Kane wasn't just a verbal statement, but a legal one. No transaction, no consultation, no use of related resources. For Jack, a contract was sometimes worth more than 1,000 promises. For Sally, upgrading her role from inspirer to discipline architect would give her a new voice. She could be the one to set the tone for Abbott Communications 2.0. An autonomous, transparent organization that focused on long-term stability rather than short-term flash. And if she does, Sally will turn her long-standing doubts about herself into a coming-of-age story. A journey from chaos to structure, from improvisation to discipline. And Kane, as the discipline landscape closes, his space shrinks. Word games, makeshift alliances, and vague sponsorship promises are hard to come by in an environment of clear contracts, clear KPIs, and the Newman-Abbott alliance. Albeit on some lines, that is forming. But Kane is never one to give up early. He can try to reinterpret the story, play the role of emergency solution provider when a rival is in trouble, or push the rumor mill to create a fake crisis. The difference this time is if Jack, Jill, Billy, Sally, Victor all side with discipline. All of Kane's shortcuts will close with unprecedented speed. As night fell over Genoa City after a day of calls, negotiations, and awkward no, the picture became clear. Jack no longer saved Billy by pouring in more money. He saved him by laying down the rules. Victor did not seek to crush his opponents with a sudden storm. He built a breakwater with a defensive corporate structure. Jill no longer had room for business romance. She had to choose the evidence. Sally did not just hold Billy's hand. She had to hold the legal hand. And Billy, if he wanted another chance, had to prove that the allure of discipline was strong enough to keep him on track, even when the impulse called again. The story was open-ended, not because it lacked an ending, but because the real ending would be shaped by the first decision each made the next morning. Whether discipline was a lifeline or a wall to climb. If they chose the lifeline, Abbott Communications could return to an enduring identity. If they choose the wall, the city will witness a familiar cycle where old names repeat old roles. And someone like Kane, while not the strongest, still knows how to make people mention him in the next emergency call. Next, as soon as Claire Newman decided to kick Kyle Abbott out of Newman, the power undercurrents in Genoa City rose immediately. The decision was not simply a personnel move. It was a declaration of a new order that Claire wanted to impose on the Newman empire. Kyle, who was trying to position himself as an agent of change in a new environment, became the first victim of a cold and calculated restructuring. Claire understood that if she wanted to keep up the pace against both visible and hidden opponents, she had to eliminate any variables that could slow down the speed of decision. Kyle, with the Abbott legacy on his shoulders and complicated family connections, was such a variable. The tension between Claire and Audra Charles did not end, but instead escalated with each step Newman took. Audra has always been an opportunist, flexing the line between friend and foe to maximize her benefits. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. But this time, Claire did not give her the space to show off as before. Claire had already set up a strategic framework: protect core assets, consolidate internal information, speed up the project approval process, and tighten the decision-making process so that only the voices of those she absolutely trusted could be heard. Within that framework, Audra was forced to prove her worth with concrete results instead of flashy promises. Two smart, fierce women, both aiming for a position of influence in the Newman structure. Conflict was inevitable. One side considered control essential Claire, the other considered flexibility, the ultimate weapon Audra. Every meeting, every memo, every personnel change had the sound of a chess game in which both were silently moving their pieces. Meanwhile, Victor Newman, who deeply understood the cyclical nature of power, decided to rally the troops. For Victor, every disturbance is a reminder to align the team, review loyalty, maintain the network, and expand the financial media legal supply lines. He not only sees the removal of Kyle as a sign that Claire is being aggressive, but also sees it as a signal for Newman to lock down the flank to prevent an Abbott alliance, or any other rival group from exploiting the gap. Victor activates the spearheads, reviewing urgent contracts, preparing resources for a defensive deal or opportunistic acquisition, and most importantly, ensuring that the flag bearer, Claire, has enough ammunition to move forward without looking back. On another front, Audra is suddenly shaken when she hears that Sally Spectra has brought Billy back into her orbit. For Audra, this is a double blow, both an emotional and trust issue, and a matter of strategic planning for human resources and finance. Sally, who was once suspected of being a stormy novice, this time appears with a clearer plan. She no longer wanted to be a lucky shot in front of the camera, but instead chose to be a scene coordinator. Sally's eyes were opened. Statement was a declaration of maturity. She saw the risk, accepted it, and decided to invest in Billy, not just as a partner, but as a professional lever to revive the project that was stuck in funding. This shocked Audra because she knew exactly what they had vowed not to do. Not to leave the project to the dining room decisions of the two powerful Abbott men. Sally's revelation that Billy would talk to Jack set off a chain reaction. Jack Abbott, both fatherly and CEO, immediately called Jill. The call was more than a courtesy. It was Jack's risk management card, sharing enough information to probe but not revealing his position. However, the move disappointed Billy because in Billy's eyes, whenever Jack got on the phone with Jill, things would shift from bold startup to cautious strategy, and he would have to accept a series of constraints. If Abbott Communications was truly to be resurrected, Billy knew he needed more decision-making space. Not surrounded by the legacy of family feuds and creditors of the past, Abbott Communications, a name that was both nostalgic and risky, became the new focus. On one side was the opportunity to take advantage of the old brand, the team it had, the loyal customer base, and especially the media position that could withstand the Newman whirlwind. On the other side was a minefield, historical debt, intertwined relationships that made any serious sponsor wary, and the risk of family intervention every time the decision was about to be made. Sally understood that raising capital for a resurrected name required a new story, a vision, a guarantee of business ethics, and an operating machine that did not depend on the mood of the family boardroom. Therefore, she agreed to postpone the launch party, not to back down, but to pave the way for a more precise jump when the hard funding was locked in. Audra, on the other hand, read the signal as a warning. Here we are again, stuck between two men who decide our future. The statement exposed her deepest fear. All the hard work building a relationship ecosystem, betting on reputation, could be overturned in an instant by a handshake between Jack and Billy, or between Billy and Sally. Did not want to relive the old lesson where talented women had to make amends for a hasty decision and pay the price for opaque negotiations. She wanted a new operating framework where all capital commitments, operating commitments, KPIs, and veto rights were properly signed, not replaced, just because family called. In that picture, Claire, even though she was on the Newman side, inadvertently became a strategic mirror for Sally and Audra to look at themselves. Claire prioritized risk prevention, locked down decision-making, and forced all connections to go through the process. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Sally started applying, choosing to build hard leverage funding tied to milestones, independent contracts with family conditions, and a modular launch program, meaning, if the big country wasn't ready, they could still launch the small country. Beta versions, niche products, or temporary media alliances to maintain brand temperature. Audra chose to hedge her risk horizontally, diversifying the pool of potential investors, opening channels of negotiation with third parties not tied to Abbott Newman, Chancellor, and installing contractual fuses to avoid sudden unplugging. For Victor, rallying the troops wasn't just about protecting Newman, it was also a message to warn competitors. Any attempt by Abbott Communications to revive if it threatened strategic market share, especially in the fields of media, advertising, customer data infrastructure. Newman was ready to launch a counterattack package, signing exclusive contracts with key suppliers, acquiring core startups to block resources, or offering unrefusable investment prices to funds considering investing. In Sally, Billy Victor did not need to win in the press. He needed to win in the backstage of the contract, where a preferential clause or timely call option was enough to suffocate competitors. Jack, in the midst of that vortex, faced a difficult choice. He wanted to help Billy but did not want to repeat the tragedy where emotions and family honor made numbers become secondary. The call to Jill therefore had two meanings. It signaled the intention to create a financial management shield for Abbott Communications, and it was also a test to see how far Jill was willing to support without imposing. Billy, realizing the risk of his family's nationalization of his dream, is even more eager to find an independent voice. Sally becomes an important partner here. She is far enough to respect professional boundaries, close enough to understand what Billy needs to make timely decisions. Postponing the launch party makes sense tactically. It gives Sally time to redefine the backbone of capital, perhaps a mix of small strategic investors, a few tech angels, and a flexible debt structure with conditions that can be converted according to media. It also gives the team a chance to tighten the message. Abbott Communications is not just back, but back with a lean data-centric operating model and a management philosophy that is separate from the family living room emotions. Audra may not like Jack's interference, but she has to admit if she wants to step onto the stage, every nail in the backdrop must be firmly nailed. Meanwhile, Claire took advantage of her competitor's silence to accelerate. She accelerated due diligence on long-term advertising contracts, locking in strategic slots on media platforms that Abbott Communications might need when it re-emerged. At the same time, she designed a package for hesitant brands, a seamless Newman ecosystem, from strategy to execution backed by financial capacity and a stable supply chain of partners. That left Sally with a new dilemma: either find another way to reach customers or create a unique value proposition that Newman couldn't easily replicate. For example, a growth studio that integrated content, commerce, and deep data for small and mid-sized brands where agility beats scale. The psychological twist of the story is that all the characters think they are regaining their autonomy. Claire wants Newman to be free from any shadow. Audra wants her career to be free from arbitrary decisions. Sally wants her project to be free from the influence of her troubled past. Billy wants to prove that he is more than just the Abbott name. Jack wants to protect his son but not repeat the mistake of taking it all home. When everyone demands autonomy, the competitive force field becomes crowded, requiring each person to give up a part of what they are used to keeping. The person who accepts to give up sooner, more wisely, will be the one to shape the next path. From here, the branches of development open up quite clearly. If Billy convinces Jack that Abbott Communications will operate with standalone management standards without pulling Jabba or the family into the wire system, he can win a soft capital commitment with the condition of preserving independence. If Sally keeps up the pace and closes one or two outside investors, e.g. tech or e-commerce funds, she will push the rebirth story out of the new Manabot loop, creating a new identity that is difficult to preempt. If Audrey turns skepticism into a mechanism, that is framing the powers, and veto mechanism in writing, she will limit being derailed by 89th minute calls. And if Claire locks in a few more infrastructure resources, Abbott Communications, when it returns, will have to choose a niche, avoid direct confrontation, thereby spending a lot of time accumulating heat. The dramatic drop will be when the launch, even though postponed, is forced to take place on a certain scale to maintain market competence. At that time, all the hidden agreements will be revealed. Will Victor intervene behind the scenes? Will Jack sign but with conditions that make Billy breathless? Will Audra accept standing next to Sally on stage as to cause? Or will she tactically retreat to wait for another opportunity? And did Claire use that moment to announce a private media alliance of Newman's putting out the fire at the very beginning? Subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with the latest news. Subscribe our channel for more latest update.